The red giant star of Theros Prime was dying, and everyone knew it. The massive ball of fire that had warmed their world for millions of years was now swelling like a balloon ready to burst. In the capital city's emergency command center, Chief Scientist Brian Collins stared at the data streaming across his screens. The numbers didn't lie, and they painted a terrifying picture. "How long do we have?" asked High Chancellor Lisa Davis, her voice steady despite the chaos around them. She had been elected to lead during peaceful times, not to oversee the possible extinction of her entire species. Brian rubbed his tired eyes. He had been working nonstop for 3 days, double-checking calculations, hoping to find some mistake that would give them more time. 8 months, maybe 9 if we're lucky. After that, our atmosphere will be stripped away completely. The room fell silent except for the humming of computers and the distant sound of evacuation sirens echoing through the city. Outside the windows, they could see the orange glow of their dying star growing brighter each day. What had once been a beautiful sunset was now a countdown to extinction. Dr. William Parker, head of their communication systems, spoke up from his corner workstation. "Chancellor, we need to face reality. Our transport ships can maybe evacuate 50,000 people, 100,000 at most. We have over 2 billion citizens on this planet. What about the colonies?" someone asked. "Already overcrowded," Brian replied. "The outer settlements are dealing with their own problems. Mining Station 7 went dark last week, probably evacuated already. The agricultural worlds can't support massive population increases without their ecosystems collapsing." Chancellor Davis walked to the large viewing window that overlooked their capital city. Below, millions of beings went about their daily lives, most still unaware of how desperate their situation had become. Parents were taking children to school. Workers were heading to offices. Street vendors were selling food to hungry customers. All of it would be gone soon unless they found help. "We have to try the galactic community," she said finally. "I know we've kept to ourselves for generations, but this is survival." Dr. Parker nodded and began preparing their most powerful transmission array. The technology was old but reliable, capable of sending messages across thousands of light years. What should we tell them? The Chancellor thought for a moment. How do you explain desperation to strangers? How do you make beings who have never met you care about your survival? "Tell them the truth," she said. "Tell them we're dying and we need help. Tell them we have families, children, entire cities full of people who just want to live. Tell them we'll share whatever technology we have, whatever resources we can offer, but we need evacuation ships and we need them fast." Dr. Parker's fingers moved quickly across his console, encoding the message for broadcast. "Should I mention our military capabilities? Our strategic location near the shipping lanes?" "No," Chancellor Davis said firmly. "This isn't about politics or trade deals. This is about survival. Keep it simple and honest." The message was prepared within an hour. It contained basic information about their planet, their population, and their timeline for disaster. They included star charts showing their location and technical specifications for anyone wanting to help with evacuation procedures. Most importantly, they included images of their people, their cities, their children playing in parks that would soon be ash. "Broadcasting now," Dr. Parker announced. The transmission launched into space, carried by powerful radio waves that would travel for weeks before reaching the nearest civilized systems. The signal would continue outward, spreading across the galaxy like ripples in a pond, carrying their plea to anyone willing to listen. In the days that followed, the waiting began. Scientists monitored their receivers around the clock, listening for any response. The government prepared evacuation lists, trying to decide who would get seats on their limited transport ships if no help arrived. Families held each other closer. Parents looked at their children and wondered if they were raising the last generation of their species. "Someone will answer," Chancellor Davis told her advisors during one of their daily briefings. "The galaxy is full of advanced civilizations. Surely some of them remember what it's like to need help." But as the days stretched into weeks, doubt crept into everyone's minds. Their message was traveling through space. But would anyone care enough to respond? Were they truly alone in a universe full of life that was too busy or too selfish to help strangers in need? The answer would come soon enough, and it would surprise everyone in ways they never expected. 3 weeks after sending their desperate message into space, the first response finally arrived. Communications Officer David Turner was monitoring the deep space receivers when his equipment suddenly came alive with incoming signals. His heart raced as he called out to his colleagues. "We've got something." Multiple responses coming in. Within hours, the communications center buzzed with activity as messages poured in from across the galaxy. Chancellor Lisa Davis hurried down from her office, hope written across her face. Finally, after weeks of terrifying silence, the galaxy was responding to their cry for help. The first message came from the powerful Hegemony Council, a coalition of advanced worlds that controlled much of the galaxy's trade routes. Dr. William Parker decoded their response and read it aloud to the gathered officials. "To the Kalari Republic of Theros Prime, we have received your transmission regarding your solar crisis. The Hegemony Council expresses deep sympathy for your situation. However, after careful consideration by our Resource Allocation Committee, we must inform you that our fleet assets are currently committed to border security operations in the Outer Rim territories. We wish you success in resolving your planetary emergency. May your ancestors guide you in these difficult times." The room fell quiet. Chancellor Davis stared at the message, reading it again slowly. "Border security operations," she repeated quietly. "They're worried about patrol routes while our entire civilization is about to die." More messages followed throughout the day. The Crystalline Collective, known throughout the galaxy for their advanced technology and vast crystal ships, sent an even colder response. Their message was brief and formal, explaining that large-scale evacuation operations violated their strict non-interference protocols. They couldn't risk setting a precedent that might require them to help other species in the future. The Machine Concordat, a network of artificial intelligences that controlled dozens of industrial worlds, ran calculations on the evacuation requirements. Their response included detailed mathematical models proving that such an operation would be economically inefficient and resource prohibitive. They suggested the Kalari consider alternative solutions to their population problem. By the end of the first week, over 30 major civilizations had responded. Each message followed the same pattern: expressions of sympathy and concern, followed by explanations of why helping was impossible, impractical, or against their policies. Dr. Rebecca Hayes, their foreign minister, spent sleepless nights reviewing the responses, looking for any hint of genuine offer to help. She found none. "They're treating this like a business proposal," she told Chancellor Davis during one of their late-night meetings. Cost-benefit analysis of the extinction of an entire species. The Zenith Federation offered to send humanitarian supplies, but explained their ships weren't designed for passenger transport. The Stellar Maritime Alliance expressed willingness to help negotiate with other powers, but had no evacuation capabilities of their own. The Ancient Order Keepers sent philosophical texts about accepting fate with dignity. As days turned into weeks, a disturbing pattern emerged. Every major galactic power had the technology and resources needed for a large-scale evacuation. Their warships regularly moved millions of troops across vast distances. Their cargo vessels transported entire cities' worth of supplies between star systems. But none were willing to adapt these capabilities to save civilian lives. Some responses were particularly cruel. The Dominion of Eternal Suns actually thanked the Kalari for the advance notice and inquired about purchasing any valuable resources or technologies before the planet became uninhabitable. They included a price list for various minerals and offered to send mining ships to extract what they could. Communication Officer David Turner grew increasingly frustrated as he processed each new rejection. "They're haggling over our graves," he muttered while filing another polite refusal. 67 responses now, and not one genuine offer to help. The weight of rejection began crushing morale across Theros Prime. News of the galactic community's indifference spread despite government attempts to control information. Protests broke out in major cities as citizens demanded to know why their leaders had failed to secure help. Some groups began forming militant factions, talking about going down fighting rather than waiting for their son to kill them. Chancellor Davis found herself making increasingly desperate appeals. She authorized offering their planet's entire strategic mineral reserves, their advanced agricultural techniques, even their most classified military technologies. Nothing worked. The galaxy's response remained the same: sympathy without action, concern without commitment. "We're truly alone," Dr. Hayes said during what felt like their 100th emergency meeting. An entire galaxy of advanced civilizations, and not one of them cares enough about strangers to lift a finger. The Chancellor stared out at their dying star, now visibly larger than it had been a month ago. "Maybe this is just how the universe works," she said quietly. "Maybe survival really is every species for themselves." But unknown to anyone in that room, one more message was traveling through space toward their world. A message that would change everything. 2 months had passed since the Kalari sent their desperate plea across the galaxy, and hope was nearly dead. Communication Officer David Turner sat at his monitoring station, mechanically checking receivers that had been silent for weeks. The flood of rejections had stopped coming, and now even the polite refusals had dried up. The galaxy had made its position clear. The Kalari were on their own, outside the communication center windows. Their dying star loomed larger each day, its angry red glow casting eerie shadows across the capital city. Evacuation preparations had begun in earnest now, with government officials drawing up lists of who would get seats on their limited transport ships. The math was brutal and heartbreaking. "Anything today?" asked Dr. Rebecca Hayes as she made her daily check on the communication center. Her voice carried the exhaustion of someone who had stopped expecting good news. David shook his head without looking up from his screens. "Nothing. Same as yesterday, same as the day before." He paused his routine scan and rubbed his tired eyes. "I'm starting to think we should shut down the receivers and focus our power on evacuation efforts." Just as he reached for the power controls, his equipment suddenly chirped with an incoming signal. Both David and Dr. Hayes froze. After weeks of silence, the unexpected sound seemed almost impossible. "Wait," David said, his fingers flying across his console. "We've got something, but this is strange." "Strange how?" Dr. Hayes moved closer to look at the display screens. "The signal encoding is really primitive, like decades behind what we've been receiving from the major powers. And the transmission path." David traced the signal's origin on his star charts. "It's coming from somewhere called the Sol System. Never heard of it." The message was short and took only minutes to decode. When David finally played through the speakers, both he and Dr. Hayes stood in stunned silence. "Kalari Republic. This is Admiral Robert Taylor, the United Nations Emergency Response Division. We received your distress signal 3 weeks ago. Our technology is limited compared to galactic powers, and our fleet is small, but we're mobilizing every ship we can spare. We don't have much, but what we have is yours. Hold tight. Help is coming." Dr. Hayes blinked in confusion. "United Nations? What's that? And who are these people? I've never heard of a Sol System civilization." David was already pulling up galactic databases, searching for any information about this mysterious species. "Here we go," he said after a few minutes of searching. "Sol System, 3rd planet, Earth. It says here they're a Type 1 civilization. Barely achieved faster-than-light travel about 50 years ago. Population around 8 billion. Confined to one system. Type 1. Dr. Hayes couldn't hide her disbelief. They're basically primitives by galactic standards. Why would they even respond to our message? And more importantly, how could they possibly help us? The question haunted both of them as they replayed the message. Every major galactic power had declined to help, citing various sophisticated reasons about resources, protocols, and strategic priorities. Yet here was a species that couldn't even colonize their own solar system properly, volunteering to help complete strangers. Chancellor Lisa Davis arrived within an hour of being notified about the message. She listened to it 3 times, her expression growing more puzzled with each replay. "Show me everything we know about these humans," she ordered. The intelligence files on humanity were surprisingly thin. They were a young species, having only recently unified their homeworld after centuries of internal conflicts. Their technology was crude by galactic standards. Their ships were slow, their weapons primitive, their industry limited to a handful of planets and space stations. Most galactic powers barely acknowledge their existence. According to this, Dr. William Parker said as he reviewed the files, they've never been involved in any major galactic conflicts. They keep to themselves mostly, focus on exploring their local region and developing their colonies. They're not members of any of the major alliances or trade federations. So they're nobodies, Chancellor Davis said slowly. A small, insignificant species that the galaxy barely notices. That's what makes this so strange, David added. Look at the response times. The Hegemony Council took 6 hours to send their rejection after receiving our message. The Crystalline Collective took 2 days. These humans took 3 weeks to respond, but they're the only ones actually offering to help. Dr. Hayes shook her head in amazement. 3 weeks to organize a rescue mission for complete strangers. Meanwhile, civilizations with thousands of years of experience and vast fleets couldn't spare a single ship. Chancellor Davis stared at the star chart, showing Earth's location. It was far from major trade routes, tucked away in what the galaxy considered a backwater region. What kind of people are these humans? She wondered aloud. The answer would come soon enough, but none of them could have predicted just how extraordinary these unknown humans would prove to be. 6 weeks after receiving the human's message, long-range sensors detected the approaching fleet. Communication Officer David Turner was the first to spot them on his screens, and what he saw made him call out in confusion. Chancellor, you need to see this. The human fleet is arriving, but something's not right. Chancellor Lisa Davis hurried to the observation deck alongside Dr. Rebecca Hayes and Dr. William Parker. Through the massive viewing windows, they could see dots of light growing larger as the human ships approached Theros Prime. But these weren't the sleek warships or massive transport vessels they had expected. Those looked like cargo ships, Dr. Hayes said, squinting at the approaching vessels. And is that a passenger liner? Admiral Robert Taylor's voice crackled through the communication system. Theros Prime Control, this is a human fleet requesting permission to begin evacuation operations. We have 47 vessels ready for refugee transport. David quickly established a video connection, and the image of Admiral Taylor appeared on their main screen. He was an older man with graying hair and tired eyes, wearing a simple blue uniform that looked nothing like the elaborate military dress of galactic powers. Admiral Taylor, Chancellor Davis began carefully, we're grateful for your arrival, but we have to ask, what kind of ships are these? The Admiral's weathered face broke into a slight smile. Well, Chancellor, we brought everything we could get our hands on. The big one out there is the Atlantic Star. She used to run luxury cruises between Earth and Mars. Captain Jennifer Wells is commanding her now, and she can hold about 50,000 passengers if we pack them in tight. He gestured toward other ships visible through the viewport. That cargo hauler there is the Hope's Dawn, my flagship. She's not pretty, but she's reliable. The white one with the red crosses is our hospital ship Mercy, commanded by Dr. Michael Thompson. Used to be a medical research vessel before we converted her. Dr. Parker looked stunned. You converted civilian ships for this mission? Had to. Admiral Taylor replied matter-of-factly. Our military doesn't have transport ships big enough for this kind of operation. So we took everything we could spare. Cargo ships, passenger liners, research vessels. Even a few private yachts whose owners volunteered them for the mission. Chancellor Davis felt a strange mix of gratitude and bewilderment. Admiral, forgive me, but your ships look improvised. They are, Taylor admitted with chuckle. My chief engineer, Tom Wilson, has been working miracles just to get life support systems installed in cargo holds. We got sleeping bags instead of proper beds, emergency rations instead of decent food, and barely enough bathrooms for everyone. But every ship can carry people safely, and that's what matters. As the human fleet moved into position around Theros Prime, the Kalari got their first close look at humanity's rescue effort. The ships were indeed a motley collection. Some were clearly military vessels, but most were obviously civilian craft hastily converted for passenger transport. Cargo containers had been fitted with oxygen systems and basic living facilities. Luxury cruise ships had their entertainment decks stripped out to make room for refugee families. Captain Jennifer Wells contacted them from the Atlantic Star. Theros Prime, we're ready to begin loading passengers. Fair warning, it's going to be cramped and uncomfortable. We got families sleeping in what used to be ballrooms and dining halls. Why? Dr. Hayes asked suddenly. Admiral Taylor, I have to ask, why are you doing this? Your government gains nothing from helping us. Your people are risking their lives for complete strangers. Admiral Taylor was quiet for a moment, looking thoughtful. Dr. Hayes, 3 months ago, my daughter asked me the same question when I volunteered for this mission. You know what I told her? What? I told her that when someone calls for help, decent people answer. It doesn't matter if they're strangers. It doesn't matter if it's dangerous or expensive or inconvenient. When people are dying and you have the power to help, you help. That's not complicated. Commander Michael Thompson's voice joined the conversation from the medical ship. Admiral's right. Back on Earth, we got families who understand what we're doing here. My wife sent me off saying she was proud that humanity could be the kind of species that helps others in need. Chancellor Davis felt tears forming in her eyes. But the cost to your people, the risk to your ships. Chancellor, interrupted Captain Jennifer Wells, let me tell you something. Every person on these ships volunteered. We had to turn people away because too many humans wanted to help. Our shipyards are working overtime building more transport vessels. Our people are donating supplies, money, whatever they can spare. Admiral Taylor nodded. That's just who we are. Maybe we're not the most advanced species in the galaxy, but we know right from wrong. The evacuation began immediately, and the Kalari watched in amazement as human crews worked tirelessly around the clock, treating every refugee with dignity and compassion. The evacuation of Theros Prime took exactly 73 days. When the last transport ship cleared the planet's atmosphere, carrying the final group of Kalari refugees to safety, their dying star had only 4 days left before complete collapse. Admiral Robert Taylor stood on the bridge of the Hope's Dawn, watching the orange giant swell in the distance, knowing they had cut it closer than anyone wanted to admit. But they had done it. All 2.4 billion Kalari citizens were safely aboard the combined human-Kalari fleet. Heading toward New Haven, a suitable world of humans had helped them locate in a neighboring system. Not a single life had been lost during the evacuation. What nobody expected was that the entire galaxy had been watching. On the bridge of the Gemini Council flagship, Eternal Dominion, Director Patricia Collins stared at the tactical display, showing the human fleet's successful extraction. Her senior staff stood in uncomfortable silence as they processed what they had just witnessed. 73 days, she said quietly. A Type 1 civilization just accomplished what our strategic planning committee said was impossible. Commander Blake Anderson, her military advisor, cleared his throat nervously. Director, our analysis was correct from a logistical standpoint. The resource expenditure required for such an operation is enormous. The humans must have bankrupted their entire economy for this. Did they? Collins pulled up intelligence reports on human space activity. According to our observers, Earth's colonies are still functioning normally. Their trade routes are active. Their military hasn't been recalled from border patrol duties. It's as if they just absorbed this operation into their regular activities. The reports painted a picture that made no sense to the Gemini's leadership. Humans had somehow mounted the largest civilian evacuation in galactic history while maintaining their normal society. Their people hadn't rioted over the massive resource expenditure. Their economy hadn't collapsed under the strain. If anything, human world seemed more unified than ever. Similar conversations were happening throughout the galaxy. In the crystal spires of the Crystalline Collective, their ruling council was debating something that had never come up before: whether their non-interference protocols had made them complicit in potential genocide. The precedent argument no longer holds, declared Counselor David Thompson during an emergency session. The humans have set a new precedent, one that makes our previous stance look callous rather than wise. The machine Concordat's artificial intelligences were running constant calculations, trying to understand how the human rescue operation could have succeeded when their models had predicted certain failure. Their conclusion was troubling. Their mathematical models had failed to account for something the humans possessed that other species apparently lacked. To find this variable, demanded Primary Processing Unit 7749. Insufficient data, replied the analysis network. Human behavioral patterns include irrational elements that do not compute within standard survival frameworks. They expend resources on non-beneficial activities. They risk personal safety for unrelated individuals. They make decisions based on abstract concepts like duty and compassion rather than optimal outcomes. Meanwhile, on worlds throughout the galaxy, ordinary citizens were having their own conversations about what they had witnessed. The human rescue mission had been broadcast across galactic news networks, and the reaction was unlike anything seen in centuries. On the hegemony world of New Centauri, protests broke out demanding that their government explain why they had refused to help the Kalari. Citizens held signs reading, "Why didn't we answer the call?" and "What happened to our honor?" The Stellar Maritime Alliance faced similar unrest as their populations questioned why a primitive human fleet had shown more courage than their advanced military forces. Social media networks buzzed with debates about duty, morality, and what it truly meant to be civilized. But perhaps the most significant change came in the form of new diplomatic overtures toward humanity. Within weeks of the Kalari evacuation, human colonies began receiving unexpected visitors. Ambassador Jennifer Wells, formerly captain of the Atlantic Star, was reassigned to handle the sudden influx of diplomatic contacts at the human embassy on New Geneva Station. Her first major meeting was with a delegation from the Crystalline Collective. Ambassador Wells, the lead Crystalline delegate, spoke through their translation device. "Our people wish to understand something about your species. Why did you help the Kalari when more advanced civilizations would not?" Wells considered the question carefully. "Because they needed help and we could provide it. Is there supposed to be more to it than that?" But surely there were strategic considerations, economic calculations, risk assessments. "Of course there were," Wells replied. "Our planners ran all the numbers. The operation was expensive, dangerous, and offered no material benefit to humanity. So what?" The delegate's crystalline structure flickered with confusion. "So what? Those factors should have prevented the mission entirely." "Why? Since when do we only do the right thing when it's cheap and safe?" Wells leaned forward. "Look, maybe we're not the smartest species in the galaxy. Maybe our technology is primitive and our ships are slow. But we know the difference between right and wrong, and when we see people in trouble, we help them. That's not complicated." Word of conversations like this spread throughout the galaxy, forcing civilizations that had considered themselves highly advanced to confront an uncomfortable truth. Somewhere along the path to technological sophistication, many had lost something essential that humanity still possessed. The galaxy was about to learn that true advancement wasn't measured in the power of your weapons or the speed of your ships, but in the courage to do what was right when others would not.